Afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Music Den. I am your host, Armando Venditti. And in this episode, I'm coming to you from my dining room / kitchen, as you can tell behind me. I'm dog sitting today. I dog sit every day, but today I happen to be in the dining room. So I figured I'd try and do an episode while the pups are sleeping. As you can probably see, if I move over, you can see Nala in the purple chair behind me, and Nina is somewhere lying down, resting. So, in this episode, I'm going to be ranking another group of albums, and it's from the band Led Zeppelin. Now, some people call Zeppelin the, the, the fathers of heavy metal, the inventors of heavy metal, which I really don't agree with because like a third of their music was acoustic folk based. So, and they never really liked that term anyway. So, what they were for me were a good, straightforward hard rock band with blues influences and some or a good amount of acoustic influences. So, again, I'm going to attempt to rank the 8 albums in the catalog. I'm not including Coda because it's a compilation album. So compilation albums for me don't count. So I'm going to attempt to rank these albums, and you're going to possibly like what I do, possibly hate what I do. Please leave your comments down below, and away we go. Starting at number 8 is Presence. Released March of 1976. This album is a bit of a departure for the group. The album is much more guitar based, much more aggressive album in some spots with tracks like Achilles' Last Stand, T for One, which is more of a blues based track. That track alone reminds me of Since I've Been Loving You from Zeppelin III. And that track, Since I've Been Loving You, was basically an inspiration in terms of the recording of T for One. Other songs we note on the album are Nobody's Fault But Mine, which is the one I most know from the album, but Achilles' Last Stand for me makes the album. 10-minute plus epic piece of genius, in my opinion. It starts off slow with the guitars and then goes into the main part, with the drums come in, and it's just breakneck tempo from the word go. John Bonham is on top of his game. And unfortunately, that album is kind of overlooked because of the fact that when it was released, they also released the soundtrack and the film too. The song remains the same. But for me, it's number 8 in this ranking. Number 7, Physical Graffiti. Released in 75. Double album. I believe the one and only double album, which is with songs like, Custard Pie, Trampled Underfoot, which for me is just funky as all get out. And, of course, there's the epic Kashmir, which was a song idea that was started from Bonham and Page. It's epic, it's grandiose, it's symphonic, or has symphonic elements due to the mellotron. It's fantastic, and this was when Zeppelin were at their peak in terms of concert draw and chart-topping success, and they didn't really, I failed to mention this, they didn't release many singles. In fact, they refused more often than not to release a single because they wanted their audience to hear their albums as a whole, which sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But that's number 7. Number 6, Zeppelin IV. Or Untitled, or whatever you want to call it, released in 71. Massive album for the band. One of the few albums that didn't have any title anywhere on the cover. It confused a good amount of people when it was released, containing, of course, the mammoth epic masterpiece of Stairway to Heaven. Also, Black Dog, Misty Mountain Hop, Going to California, Four Sticks, When the Levee Breaks, Rock and Roll. Did I miss any tracks? I mean, the album is phenomenal. Some would say overplayed. Some would say they never need to hear Stairway to Heaven again. I'm not one of those people. I think it's bloody fantastic. I was almost going to swear, but I didn't. I think it's up there. It's turned into a desert island disc for me. And that's number 6. Number 5, the debut. Released in 1969, recorded over a 30-hour period. This album, when it came out, shocked a lot of people just for the dynamics of it, the soft acoustic pieces, the blues pieces, particularly of How Many More Times, Dazed and Confused, which I inside one, which, what can be said about Dazed and Confused? I mean, it's a fantastic piece of work, that track. And Your Time Is Gonna Come, it shocked a lot of people for its approach on the type of music it was. It was one of the first, I believe, one of the first hard rock albums to be released. And it just took music in a whole different direction. Number 4, Into the Outdoor. Released in 79, containing 7 tracks. It was recorded at Polar Studios, which were owned at the time by ABBA. It was said that the band were looking for a recording studio to record in. Being tax exiles, they couldn't enter England to record, so they were looking around, and I believe Bjorn and Benny of ABBA offered them Polar Studios because they were not using it at the time, and they were also label mates for Atlantic Records. Also, footnote, they were signed to Atlantic Records throughout the world, with the exception of France, which they were signed to the Barclay label. But the album itself is considered to be, there's a much more of a keyboard presence on it, much more, and when I say softer, I don't mean that in a bad way, but with songs like All of My Love, which was a single, and in terms of the keyboard influences on the album, Um, songs like Carousel Opera, the massive epic that starts side two, which is my personal favorite on the album. And you could just feel Bonham's playing that you could almost feel that he probably broke a few snare heads when he was drumming. It's just a masterpiece of a track. The album was criticized by Bonham and Page because they felt that it wasn't where they wanted to go, and they vowed that when they were going to do their next album, they were going to return more to a hard rock, more guitar oriented sound. Unfortunately, that never happened, as we all know. Number three, Led Zeppelin II, recorded in released in October '69, featuring the hits, Whole Lot of Love, Heartbreaker, The Lemon Song, What Is and What Should Never Be, Thank You, um, Living Lovin', She's Just a Maid, Moby Dick, Rambling On, you know, Bring It On Home. Any one of these songs is a bloody classic. Unbloody real. I can't say enough about it. It was a massive hit for the band. This sort of cemented the band as contenders and a group that was not going to go away quietly, if ever at all. So yeah, and I mean the fact that it's number three doesn't mean that I don't love it and admire it and listen to it. It's still played on radio today. All these tracks I mentioned, they're all played on FM radio today. So it has its longevity. Some people would say some of the tracks are overplayed. Maybe that's why it's number three on the list. I don't know. But it is what it is. And number two, Led Zeppelin III. Released in 1970, containing the tracks Immigrant Song, Celebration Day, Gallows Pole, That's the Way, Since I've Been Loving You, Out on the Tiles. Uh, what can be said about this album? It was considered to be, it didn't sell as well in the beginning when it was first released. It was considered to be more of an acoustic album. Some people felt that they had good momentum with the first two albums, and that this one set them back in terms of their popularity. But to me, this album, flawless. You know, I forgot to mention the track "Friends" on the album. So to me, this is where Zeppelin, along with other bands, but Zeppelin in particular at this point, were experimenting with acoustic numbers, percussion in terms of bongos being played. I think it's just an amazing piece of work all the way through. That's number two. Coming in at number one, Houses of the Holy. Released in 1973. And this was their last album to be released on Atlantic, and until they started releasing albums on their own imprint, Swan Song Records. Brilliant album. Eclectic, fun, grand. epic. It starts off with the song remains the same, which right from the get-go, when you hear Jimmy Page's guitar on the intro, you know it's going to be a breakneck track in terms of the drumming. And it is until it comes to the section, the breakdown section, where you hear Robert Plant come in with vocals, I Had a Dream. And it just goes through all these changes and on the one track, and it's just great. Originally was supposed to be an instrumental, but they decided to put vocals on it. Other tracks of note, the Rain song. Beautiful, epic, drenched in mellotron, grandiose, heartbreaking, whatever you want to call it, a beautiful piece of work. What else is on there? Over the Hills and Far Away, The Ocean, the grunge or the crunge, whatever you want to call it. Side 2, Dancing Days, which is a fun track. I always think of that track when I think of like when the summer comes or when the spring comes. It's like, you want to open the windows, let the cool air come in, the fresh air come in, and you want to play that track and just let everyone in the neighborhood hear it. That's another thing. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I remember as a kid, I lived in a cul-de-sac, much like the one I live in now. And I had neighbors that would play their records in the summer and have their windows open, and you could hear it in the street, and you could walk up and down and just listen to the music. And my neighbors would be sitting on the veranda, outside on the porch, veranda, whatever you want to call it, and just let the music play and just have a good time having coffee or drinks, whatever. My family did that as well. Not as much, but we did that as well. So this album overall reminds me of that. It was a number one album. I believe the pre-order for the album guaranteed it a number one spot on the charts. Some people say it's too eclectic. I don't agree with that. I just think it's a fantastic album, and it's the one I usually listen to the most. I mean, I listen to all these albums, but this is the one that I tend to gravitate towards most. It's between this one and Zeppelin III. But someone had to go, one album had to go to number one on the list. So there you go. So yeah, that's the album. That's the list. Sorry. And hopefully you'll like the list, and you agree or you disagree. Let me know down below. And I like to get a dialogue going about this. So hopefully you guys are having a great day, and the dogs were able to be quiet. And hopefully you guys are looking after each other and looking after yourselves. And I will be back soon with another video. Have a good day. Take care.